Hello, I'd like to open the December 19th meeting of the Board of Select Board. And so the first thing on the agenda is to take action on the meeting minutes of October 28th, November 7th, November 21st, and December 5th. We will need to do a roll call vote. May I have a motion?
Motion approved.
And a second? I'll
Second.
And a roll call vote.
Aye,
Hi,
Patrick.
Chuck.
Aye, Jamie. So it passes. So I'd like to announce a single opening on the Historical Commission as requested by the chair of such commission. So if anyone is interested, please send a letter of interest to Town Hall, to Michael Canales or Teresa Zanetti. Thank you.
Can I just clarify the application we got said historic preservation, we're sure it's the Historical Commission that the opening has? 'Cause I think Lynn is on both of them, but maybe not.
Yeah, it's, Peter, is it the?
It's the Historical Commission.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Thank you. I thought it was. That's what I wrote down and now you threw me off by asking me. I'm like, okay, Historical Commission, yes.
So, and I'd like to make the appointments to the Cultural Council. And I will, and I apologize beforehand if I mispronounce anyone's last name. So Anne Farrell, Audrey Sackow, John Perkel, Joan Burkhart, Shelley Sherman, Jeannie Bernard, Naomi Spatz, and Wendy Stroman.
Motion appointed.
And a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Hi, Chuck.
Aye, Patrick.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you. So an update on dredging project by Michael Canales, our town administrator, to review of matters presented and votes by the select board may be taken.
All right, so. Share my screen here.
I haven't seen it.
So in September, the board had voted to put me in charge of this project. One of the first thing I did was get together with GZA, go over what we need to do prioritization wise, because they had an entire schedule. We had $99,900 worth of work still on the old contract that we had with them. And what I did was ask them to prioritize what we needed to do in order that we do it in a very procedural way so that we get things checked off to make sure they would not prevent anything from moving forward. So the things that we need to do are the first 4 items that are on here. This is wetland resource area delineation. They did notice there was isolated areas of environmental concern in Bullard Woods. So they'll be going to the Conservation Committee over the course of the next 6 months to get those in front of them to say, here are some of the areas of concerns that we have that are within the area where we want to bring the hydraulic dredging and where we put the geotubes. We would continue along with the NHESP coordination data review over the next 6 months. And then we would do the test pits at Bullard Woods. So actually, I'll stop the screen share for a moment. I was explaining this to Jamie. Hopefully people can see me. So when we refer to, I'll shut off the screen sharing just in case. Just so people understand that Bullard Wood has a good angle at it. And the geotubes, you're gonna have to cut in steps into the bank. And then you're gonna have to set the tubes inside. And when they'll reform that ledge. But it means that you have to create levels. So it'd be a stepped almost like pyramid going up. Then you'd have the geotubes, say 2 on the bottom and then 1 on the next level, recreating that angle. So one of the things that you have to do is you have to do test pits because we're going to have to determine if there's any ledging in there that would prevent us
Right.
from placing the geotubes in the proper locations. And then,
So when you say a pit, it's really just like looking at where you're going to step it.
yes, where you're going to step it, do some strategic test pits, identify any ledging materials that are non-conducive. You know, we don't know if way back in when there was a whole bunch of wood thrown in there and now it's deteriorated, creating voids, things like that. So this is standard stuff that you do with ground projects as far as moving forward. It is a little trickier getting into that area to do them because if we're not going to, you don't want to really disturb too much. And these will be isolated test pits in order to make the determination. The next one has a very big difference in price. So let me throw this one up on the screen. So one of the things, and we've been in touch with the tribe and spoken to their archaeological team and ours, and they gave us names of companies.
Or who?
What's that?
Are you using ACOM?
We have a couple companies giving us bids. There were companies recommended right from the tribe that they've worked with. So we are definitely, but what we've identified is that the archaeological dig is going to be anywhere from 6,600 to 48,500. So let me explain why that is such a disparity. So the 6,600 right off the bat is they're going to do a look at the records and information that is on record about the area. Sometimes that's all that's needed to determine that is not an area that has any significance, importance, or anything else. Therefore, you can proceed. More than likely, because even though this wasn't a lake, it was a wetland area, because obviously it became a lake when they dammed it, but it was a wetland area. Typically, the tribe would have been in those areas. So more than likely, we are not going to get away with it, but that's where they'll start. They'll do the initial assessment. That work can begin now, where they can begin looking at the archaeological records and information that they have to make the first determination of what test pits rest they would have to do as far as like archaeological dig. Why it can get up to 48,000 depends on, that's the most extreme that it would be. And that would be they start to encounter stuff. They go out, they start digging pits, they sift through, and all of a sudden we find out there's substantial stuff out there. So that is why there is such a big discrepancy in there. And then you'll see that the next couple of items.
Can we say,
So
can I ask a question?
should we let Michael
up to
finish
you.
thought?
Maybe just let me finish the
Okay.
timeline and then any questions? That is why you see the next three items, MIPA review of the EEMF and the SEIR are no money on the 48,000. And if we're getting toward the 48,500, we could be getting in a position where we can't use this area. So we're not going to pay to do stuff that possibly this project could. So those first four are actually four very important pieces that are going to tell us this project can move on to the next phases. And then we would also, the last one is we'd be working with task 5, the coordination data review for NHESP, and then submission of an NHESP by June or July. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Patrick, you ready?
Yeah, to one point and then a question. It's my understanding that the first damming of Stockbridge Bowl actually occurred before settler times by the Native Americans. So I'm not sure that the idea that it wasn't a lake until sometime in the 19th century or whatever, 20th century is necessarily accurate.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that, but the other point I'll make is that the common settlement area in Native American times was what's now the Tanglewood property. That was a massive, not massive, but it was where many Native Americans lived was actually on that plain that's now Tanglewood. So once again, it may suggest that there is archaeological activity there. My question has to do with whether we have all of our legal, T's and I's dotted or crossed or whatever. Since Bullard Woods is private property, do we have an agreement in place? First of all, is the dredging project a town project? an SBA project? Is there, like, from a legal perspective, as we start spending money on impacts on private property, do we have an agreement in place to protect us from, for example, the anti-aid amendment?
Yes, so the anti-aid amendment specifically is that there's no public good from the project. So you are allowed to do projects in coordination with private entities that have a
Okay.
public good. Obviously, the dredging of the lake, and this is just where to locate the geotubes for the most efficient
Right.
dredging of the lake, is to go to Bullard Woods. I have already spoken to Pat Canelli about, and she's going to be approaching her board about giving us the permissions that we need to do the test pits and the rest. So
And
that's,
the archaeology?
yeah, and that's not part of this. This is just, I'm doing
Okay.
that. So
All right.
that's why it's not in the cost analysis.
Right.
So I've already reached out to them that we would need permission to do these items. And obviously to allow the archaeological study to happen on the property.
And just for clarity, as you work down the first four till you get to the archaeological one.
Yeah,
They're already paid for and they're already put into place, so to speak. They're already ready to go.
yeah, we already have the
Okay.
funding in place to do
Okay.
all these projects.
And-
We actually have close to $200,000 available for the work.
Okay.
So we have more than enough. The original contract still had just shy of $100,000 remaining on it. So we're still working off the original contract.
Okay.
And this will get us to a point. And then I'm already working on the 2026 items that we would be securing. Once again, working on a timeline to have a yay or nay for this to move forward. And if it does move forward, to move forward by fiscal year 2028. So
And my other question is, once you get to the archaeological one, how long do we give that for them to look for artifacts? Is it a month, 6 months, 12 months?
a lot of it's going to depend on how much
What they find.
they start finding.
Okay.
And that's where it can lead down that sort of rabbit hole. And that's why the cost could, and that
Escalate.
we just have from the minimal to the maximum, and it more than likely will end up somewhere in between.
Mhm.
But at this point, we don't know until they actually begin the archaeological dig.
And do they keep in contact with you or GZA?
They'll be keeping in contact with GZA, who will be informing me of any major
Okay,
fines or anything else that come, possible stops, whoops, things like that.
okay.
And
What are some possible stops?
just
Oh,
significant
I got a question.
items and things
And
like
human
that.
remains.
So, yeah.
Human remains.
Chuck, did you have a question?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
So if they do the dig and they find a significant amount of artifacts and we can't use that, we have to find an alternative to
Yeah.
the dredging
So-
material?
So the way that I see this is, obviously our whole goal of 2028 is that it all falls in line with us using Bullard Woods because we don't have a secondary identified area to do this in. So then we'd have to possibly go back to standard dredging, other things like that, or think about, that's where, once again, it'll be a decision point where it'll have to go back to the select board and say, all right, hydraulic dredging to Bullard Woods is out. Here are our, and then what I would probably do is pursue what are our options, and then come back to you guys and say, do we continue to pursue now option
Mhm.
C or D? So right now, as I took it over, was Bullard was identified as the primary unloading, as this, that was my understanding. It was identified as how this project needs to be done. So, and that's what I'm pursuing at this point. Obviously, if we get to the point that it's stopped by one of these items, then we'll have to reconsider what we're doing.
Okay,
And just to clarify, and while I certainly wouldn't presume to speak for the tribe, generally what they have an issue with is if we're disturbing the ground, not adding new ground on top of the ground. So it's not like the issue is going to be that you're bringing all this stuff in from the lake and putting it on top. They just don't want the artifacts and the bones dug up.
Right,
So
but we have to tier.
I get it, but it could also be that there's a different engineering solution that would
Could be.
require the
Yes.
tiering. So, I don't think that the question of the archaeology is going to necessarily, scuttle the project.
Well, for the geotubes, you have to remove some of the trees in that area.
Yeah.
There's gonna be a significant disruption. So let's just let it take
Yeah.
each step along, but the main thing was getting this in alignment. What were the steps that could bring this to a screeching halt? Let's
Yeah.
get those answered. And then if we get through this phase, then we really move on to the permitting and the construction drawing and bids.
Mhm.
Right. Thank you. Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, I don't think we need to take a vote, right, on anything?
Nope, this was just informative for the board. As I said, I'll come back in 3 more months and give an update, and I will come to the SBSC, give the same information that was presented here to them, so all the members of the SBSC will know exactly what. So please let me know when you're meeting in January, and I will attend your next meeting.
I just want to compliment
It will be.
SBSC and Jamie. I think that this is going great, and I just want to thank you guys for your work.
Night. All right.
Jamie?
Don?
Hi, sorry, thank you. And thank you for doing all this work, and Michael and all that. I would suggest at the earliest convenience, looking into how we're going to finance some of this. I know there's already been some thinking about it, but I'm not sure the whole project financing is going to be smooth sailing. And I think the earlier we look into how it's going to possibly be financed, the better.
Yeah, as soon as we get through these next couple of steps, as we begin the construction documents, we'll also begin the estimations, because we're gonna have to understand which procurement laws and others that has to fall under based on the value of the overall project itself. So if we get through these next 4 items, we get cleared to move ahead, then we'll be developing the full scope of work, the 25 and 50% design, and then we'll begin the cost estimates at that point, as we move closer and closer to 2028 season. Probably, it's probably going to be at least a year, if not a little longer, 18 months before we have some of those. And right, that's then the next big step after these initial ones that could bring it to a halt is, okay, do we have the funds available? And on that note, thanks for asking that, because it reminds me, the inland dredging program the state did as a pilot last year, they are not continuing.
Right.
So there is not a state option now available.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the public? Seeing none. All right, update on fire EMS by Town Administrator Mike Canales. Review of matters presented. Votes by the select board may be taken. All right.
All right, so let me.
Now, is this the intern presentation?
So I already gave this presentation, but there was a couple little changes made. So I'm just gonna run through this quickly, and if there are any
Is this
questions,
the one the intern did?
he started it.
Yeah, all right.
And
Just want to see.
we've developed off of it. Andrew stopped today
Yeah.
to say hi, so it was nice to meet him. And a lot of people have put a lot of effort into this project, and I wouldn't want to try listing everybody that's involved because it's been a lot of work. So we began the study of the multiple towns. The idea was combining fire EMS and hire multiple full-time professionals to back up our volunteers. This began with Lee and Stockbridge, has switched over to possibly Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, and Richmond, is now focused on Stockbridge and West Stockbridge. We're looking at a 24/7 operation for enhanced coverage, shared resources, increased professional support. It does bring in a couple things. There is a high initial cost and an increased operational cost to both the communities involved. We look very carefully at the financial strength of the two communities. Both Stockbridge and West Stockbridge are very strong financially with excess capacity as far as ability to shoulder some of the needs that would be associated with this. And here's what the operation looks like. Like I say to anybody, I'm going through this. If you want, I can stop along the way if it makes sense on a slide, so I don't have to go back. So,
Just, I would like to stop on the last slide for a second,
Sure.
because I don't necessarily agree with your fourth column.
all right,
I think that, we identified ways to smooth the budget around between now and fiscal year 32 or 33.
Yeah.
And then use the debt that's coming off in those years to fund this building, which I think is around $5 million.
yes.
So I just would point out that there won't be a pressure on the municipal budget, at least upward pressure, because with that smoothing, basically that building,
But in order to smooth it, we need to set aside about $1 million of free cash this year to cover
right.
3 years of debt payments before that other debt falls off. And then we need to get an ambulance order, so we're in the magnitude of another 280,000.
But that 1.3 million, we can pay for completely with tax dollars we've already collected, which is
Yes.
what free cash is.
Yes.
So, basically, my point is the taxpayers have already paid for this.
Yeah.
All the way through 2033.
Yes.
And I just think we shouldn't, there's a lot of worry about financial issues and pressures. And I just wanted to kind of say, don't worry so much about this.
Yes. And when I get to the end, I'll talk about the smoothing also in the financial lines. So what we're planning on for, if anybody's just hearing this for the first time, is we are planning on 8 full-time EMS fire personnel. 1 chief, 2 of the staff members will serve as deputy chiefs. And this is going to be roughly a $1 million operation. We'd set it up that the deputy chief, one would oversee the fire operation and one would oversee the EMS, and the chief themselves would oversee the entire operation. The finance oversight would be done by the administrators of the 2 towns, the select board designees from each town, and the fire chief. This would allow us, if we ever had a loss of a position, whether it's a chief, the deputy chief, or whatever, would allow us to have a command structure that would allow us to continue operations if we were to lose any individual position.
But it's 8 employees total or 9 employees total?
9 total.
9
Yes.
total, because
8.
it kind of looks at the slide like there's 15.
Down below, those are considered to be volunteers and paid.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So
Okay.
here is where we would have 6 firefighters, 2 deputy chiefs, and a chief as part of it. The oversight board, like I said, would consist of the administrators, the designees from the select board, and the fire chief. They'd be held quarterly with status updates, budgets, projected needs of equipment, and then a status report from the fire chief on operations, fire prevention, and training. So what we want to do is make sure both towns are very well informed of exactly how the operation is running, any issues or anything else that we've encountered. We looked at the ways to break it up, and this is where Andrew was very helpful. The intern, we looked at a number of different ways, and using the EQV, which is a combination of the value of the community against the population of the community, creates a 60-40 split, where Stockbridge will be picking up 60% of the cost and West Stockbridge will be picking up 40% of the cost.
And is that going to be calculated every year or EQV based on the year that we go forward?
That would be part of the IMA that we'd have to figure out in the long run. So this is a point. It could be a lock-in at the initial start. It could be one that's done over a 3-year average. It could be done on a year-to-year basis. There's
Just point out
a number
that
of ways.
West Stockbridge saw its EQV jump in the last 2 years by 40 or 50%, and Stockbridge saw its go up about 20%. So I think that, once again, from a smoothing perspective, we might want to kind of.
Yep. Roughly that comes out to be that Stockbridge would be funding about 600,000 and West Stockbridge about 400,000, just rounding these numbers off. Location and capital costs. So, this whole thing started when we first started, we also brought in some consultants, Data Consulting Group. They looked at the response time, so we could carefully look at this. They originally looked at a Lee Stockbridge model and then a West Stockbridge model. That allowed us to figure out where the best placement would be. We currently have agreements, so West Stockbridge is working on an agreement with Richmond to cover the next couple of years. While Stockbridge has Lennox and Lee in the next 2 years, and we'll see a decreased cost from Lee due to a grant that we had received from the federal government. We used a definite methodology from JB Consulting, which allowed us to look at the times, and based on those, we found that the best thing would be, have a new substation on the West Stockbridge road, right near the 183 and 102. So this is first a study done by JB Consulting. You can see that red to green are the best response, and right now we have a strong response in our downtown, but you can see that locating a station at the 183, 102 crossroad creates very much improved response times throughout both communities. So the proposed location right now is just a default. This would be, I'm going to recommend that we form a committee to look at this. But I think that in the meantime, we're just identifying a default location. And that would be, if you're looking, this is the water treatment plant right up toward Pine Woods. It's pretty flat right through there. And it would be something that we'd be located, allow us to quickly get on the road to either community with our paid departments.
Just on the, it says base at Stockbridge Central Station and then a new substation?
And then a new
So
substation.
that would replace the central station.
Or the central station could become our surplus equipment. There's a little debate over, would it be better to add a.
You're not going to put the ambulance to central station.
No.
You're going to put the ambulance at.
Move it, it would be at the 183, 102 Stockbridge. Yep. The default option for the building right now is what's called the Morton Building. An example, as I'm showing on the screen right now, is a substation that was in Hadley, Mass. Andrew, who found this slide, actually is going to UMass Amherst, and he said one of the neat things is he's living right near this. He's seen this station. That was built for 5.3 million. There was also Cambridge, New York, who built their station as seen here for 4 million. These are all Morton designs, which are pre-designed buildings that are done. And Williamsburg, Mass. This one's a combination police and fire. And this one was built for 5.3 million. And because of the Inflation Reduction Act, they were able to get credits back of 1.2 million for energy efficiency. It ended up costing the taxpayers 4.1. So we will attempt to do as much as we can to keep the costs in line. But one concern that was brought up is, have we looked at the operational needs of Stockbridge? This is where I'm going to be adding a new wrinkle. So what we've done to this point from the financial team in the town and with the fire chief is look basically at a Morton style building. It would provide the minimal impact on the tax rate while providing an adequate facility. And we're recommending this as our default. What we'd like to do is establish a 5-person building committee to look at this option based on the operational needs and costs associated with the new location. The building committee would have until roughly this time next year to submit a recommendation to the select board as far as what type of building should be done. I would recommend that since we're looking at the operational needs, we let the focus fall to the firefighters in town who have greatly served this community over many, many years. So I think that what we should do is have 3 members of the fire company, 1 member from the community at large, and 1 member from the finance committee or their designee to serve on this committee to study the options that are available, looking at the operational needs and then coming back to us and allowing me to do the cost analysis of what they're considering.
I'd be more comfortable if you chaired it.
I think that
I think we can have all these participants, but I would be a lot more comfortable if you chaired it.
All right.
I'm just saying.
I would attend the meetings as an adjunct, like part of it, but I think that there are some people there and I think there's a benefit to allowing the fire company to really identify those operational needs. This is their expertise. And I would definitely be there to support them go whenever there's needed or anything
I
else.
just feel like with the intersection of the finance component and the municipal operation building component, that the expert, but I'm not putting it with it. Okay.
It's ultimately a decision of the select board on how you would like to establish your committee.
Chuck, would you like to add anything because you've been a part of this committee?
What was that?
Would you like to add anything because you've been a part of this committee?
No, I think Mike should go to the meetings, but I don't think he should be chair
No.
of it.
Okay.
I think it
And
should
Chuck, are
be.
you going to be a member of the committee?
What's that?
Will you be a member of the committee?
Not sure. I think it's something we should discuss and see who the 3 members they bring up on the fire department. And then the finance committee.
So what I'd probably do is ask the fire company to recommend 3 names to the select board for this committee. Put out information now to say, is there anybody from the community at large who would like to be on this? And then I'll reach out to the chair of the finance committee, asking them to supply somebody from the finance committee or that. It's basically another set of eyes on this than the same people that have been looking at it since. And it would just trying to ensure that we do the best and really plan the best. And I think by getting as many stakeholders and individuals looking at it would be a positive. I would say that I've taken the lead in it to this date, so it's not bad to let somebody else take a shot at it. I know there's from Jim McDonald to Scott Muir and others that would be interested in being involved on this, but ultimately that'll be the decision of the company. So, and we can come back to this one. I'll just finish up going through my slides.
Yeah.
I mean, your estimate of a stick build on this building is what, 3 times more expensive than the Morton building?
But there's a whole bunch of paths that you could go, such as you could go with the bays, a Morton design, and do the office component as more of a stick built because there's a reason for that. It could be, let's let a committee do their job they'd have more of a focus on what are the operational needs going forward than that. We can ask them to come back and make quarterly presentations back to this board of where they're at, what's going on, any point at that. Ultimately, remember, these are all advisory boards to the select board who would have to make.
I get it, but you don't want people to work for a year and then not,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think everybody understands that we have to figure out a cost that is we're trying to find the best medium between cost and operations, and we don't want to jeopardize one for the other. So, yeah. Based on the defaults, here's what we'd be looking at for Stockbridge and then West Stockbridge. So, we'd have the cost of the building, the Stockbridge plus our annual costs plus West Stockbridge, their contribution into it. And I'll explain later how we'll smooth this out. One of the things that we do need to begin working on immediately is the next 2 years. Now, we've taken step 1, which was appointing Vinnie to be the chief of both communities. We already have in place our EMS coverage, and West Stockbridge is filing theirs for the next 2 years.
Right.
One of the things I'd be asking the board to approve is moving ahead with with a recommendation to go to this year's town meeting to bring on 2 additional firefighters. With West Stockbridge picking up 40% of that cost, and then we're also getting a savings of $100,000 off of ambulance. This would mean that we'd be roughly coming up with $154,000 more in staffing. We have to remember that we're getting $100,000 off the ambulance, and then West Stockbridge chipping in $101,000. We also at this year's town meeting would have to, because if we're going to be up and running for fiscal year 28, which we have a lot of things now on the plate for 28, we need to get an ambulance ordered at this year's.
second down this town meeting.
It's about 2 years out.
No, but so we're going to bring that proposal
Yes.
forward for this year.
This year.
Town meeting.
If you
Okay,
guys
good.
support this. It'll be West Stockbridge coming up with 40% and Stockbridge coming up with 60%, so about 270,000. The ambulance fully outfitted is about 450,000. So, and we'll work on
How long is the IMA going to be?
2-year IMA for the bridge years, and then after that, a long-term IMA on the full operation.
I mean, I'm just wondering if, so you think it makes sense to have both towns appropriate money for an ambulance that without the IMA in place, or you're going to put the IMA in place first?
We'll be bringing an IMA in the next couple of months for the
Oh,
next
okay.
2 years, and then long-term. I also think it shows buy-in by both communities on this concept, so we're tying ourselves together. When we look at the operational costs right now, Stockbridge is paying $620,000 for an overall operation. That's the payments to Lee and Lennox and the cost of running our fire department with the staffing levels that we have. West Stockbridge is about 195. This would jump to about 728 next year with 281 for West Stockbridge. So you can see how, it's not hugely above what we're doing now and would begin transitioning. And you'll see at the end of this slide, we're going to begin actively over the next 2 years going after the SAFER grant from the federal government in the hopes that we can get 5 employees covered under the SAFER program, which would mean that they would pick up the cost of the person's wages and fringe benefits for 4 years at 100%. So can't guarantee we'll get it. That's why those other numbers are in there. We will be doing everything we can to apply for a SAFER grant. This is that debt schedule I was talking about. If we can set aside roughly $1 million this year to make debt payments on the building, assuming that we can get the building lined up and begin construction in FY '29, we would fund the first 3 years of the debt payments on the loan for the building from that free cash set aside. And then in fiscal year 32, we have debt falling off from the water tank improvements that were done and the $2.6 million road and bridge grant that was done a number of years ago. That would allow us, as you can see in this slide, the final slide is right now shows that our debt's coming down, and then we only see a slight blip in 2032. But it's that smoothing effect where we wouldn't bring on anything that would create a sizable jump in the cost of
That's overall debt.
our overall debt. That's our overall debt payments.
And
So the whole idea is to smoothen this entire process so that at no point do we see a huge jump in taxation to the residents, but allow us to progressively move forward with bringing on staffing and the rest so that we are ready to be up and running for the fiscal year 2028.
And when will you be noted, like when you apply for the SAFER grant, when will you know if you received it or not?
So we'll apply this spring for a fall notification. And then if we don't get it, we'll immediately turn around and apply again the following fall.
Okay.
And then we may have an outside chance at 3 shots at it. We'll definitely get 2 shots at it
Okay.
before we are up and running. So, and then the last page are just all the different sources that were used to put together this slide.
So just to reiterate, we're expecting in fiscal year 32 to have the water tank and update principal interest, as well as the bridge and road replacement and repair principal and interest fall off. And so we're effectively bringing this proposal forward without any impact between now and 2032 on the overall debt payments of the town.
Right.
So we are basically, with money we've already collected, which is what free cash is by definition, we're already basically paying for this idea through the next 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is awesome. Thank you.
And so there's no votes to be taken tonight.
No, actually, we're looking for you guys to endorse this plan so that we bring this forward to establish our building committee. And I would begin building the budget for next year, free cash appropriations for the ambulance and the rest. So if you guys are confident in moving forward with this, I'd be looking for a vote. So I'm not sure if there's any questions from you or if you want to.
Chuck, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
So, Patrick, any more questions?
No, sorry.
It's okay. And so do I have a motion to accept this plan and allow Michael Canales to get a committee and apply for a grant.
Comments from the public?
Oh, anybody from the public have a question? Seeing none,
Motion to proceed.
a second, a roll call.
I Chuck.
Hi, Patrick. Hi, Jamie. All right.
Is there any debate on these? You had a little discussion there about the setup of the committee.
I'll defer to you
Okay.
guys.
All right.
Because I'd rather you make just you and Chuck, because you're both on the committee, make those decisions.
That's
If
fine.
you're attending that.
All right.
Um,
And we'll put something on the website and the rest. So if there's somebody from the community at large, please let it, no matter what, we should have somebody outside of all of it.
I know it's a formality, but once you have the roster of appointees, you should bring them back and have
They
us.
have to come back to this committee and you guys would have to appoint them.
Appoint
They'd be
them.
sworn in.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Norm,
Those are going to be meetings that are held in public session.
Yep, yes.
Good.
They'll probably be doing site visits and other stuff, which won't be Zoomed,
All right.
because they're probably gonna go to some of these places, see the physical buildings and things like that.
all right. Select board vote to acquire by gift a parcel of land located on Park Street, to wit, the lot shown on Assessor's Map 107, Lot 69, owned by the Laurel Hill Association for general municipal purposes, including parking for the Ice Glen, Laura's Tower, and Mary Flynn Trail, for no consideration and on such other terms and conditions as the Board of Select people.
That's not stay selectman, because I was at the town. meeting.
Okay.
That was the. what was
Oh,
asked then.
okay. Deem appropriate with the understanding that by acquiring said property, the town of Stockbridge will be the owner of and responsible for the maintenance of the Mary Hopkins Goodrich Bridge.
So just as a reminder, that was what was passed at town meeting. What has happened in the interim is I've worked with Laurel Hill, their legal counsel, our legal counsel. We have the deed in front of the select board tonight to acquire the property. Patrick, you had asked before about what the next step. I've already signed. So we already had a preliminary estimate on the repairs that would be needed. And I have already signed with the JB Bridge Consultants to do the RFP, to do the technical aspects of an RFP to get out so that we can get the work out there, get it awarded and begin work. We're hoping to begin work in fall of next year.
Okay.
So it would mainly be new steel cables, new decking, $100,000 of work, which should get the bridge good for the next 20 to 25 years. So, yeah, there was nothing structural, but it is time to look at replacing the steel cables, the rest and that. One of the things they will be recommending is that we do drill in to take a peek inside to make sure, because there was structural steel behind inside, and just make sure that there's nothing going on deeper, but that would need a little extra work as far as reinforcement. You're not going to tear down and rebuild that from scratch. That is not an option, but whether or not anything needs to be sealed up or anything.
It's another bridge we know.
Yeah. So something we're familiar with doing. Like I said, we had the estimate from before. Now I just need the technical aspects in order to put out the RFP. I expect to get that in the next month or so and then get the bid out and see if we can get that lined up. And we have the money set aside for bridge work already.
And so this parcel includes the parking lot,
Yes.
the bridge. The town already owned on the other side of the bridge,
Yes.
correct?
That is
So
correct.
it's the parking lot and the little like area where we had that reception for, when we were doing the signs.
Right. And because we own both sides of the bridge, we automatically own the bridge.
What a great deal. And did we ever, I'm assuming that there was no action taken on the abutting homeowner when their house got hit by the truck and they had suggested moving that garage and
I have-
extending the parking lot. There's nothing there. Okay.
All right, so can I have a motion to acquire this gift of land? So it's assessor's map 107 lot 69.
Yes. Motion
Make a
required.
motion.
Second,
Second.
and a roll call vote, please.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Jamie.
I can't multitask.
Okay, so, do we have any community announcements other than wishing people a happy holiday? All right, I do have one thing I wanted to, read, and then our next meeting will be January 16th. We will not have a meeting in January, the first Thursday of January because of the holidays. So the next meeting is January 16th. So my statement is, I, as chair, would like to state that the special permit application for DeSisto on January 16th, 2025, though there has been a recent article on December 17th in the Berkshire Eagle, this special permit application and the information contained is not and has not been discussed publicly by all select board members of the Stockbridge Select Board. There should have not been any statements in the press prior to hearing the applicant on this matter. Accordingly, there shall be no more public discussions of this matter before the Select Board hears the formal application on January 16th. Thank you. Thank you, and have a happy holiday season. And a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Patrick.
Aye, Jamie.